right, so this is the Wednesday, January 17th, 2024 meeting of the Finance Committee. This is being held by Zoom and pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and Governor Healy's March 29, 2023 revised order extending remote participation by all members of any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the Great Barrington Finance Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with the right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.townofgb.org. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so in the following manner, and they should see the instructions at the top of the posted agenda. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Pursuant to Mass General Law 7C 30A Section 20F, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body or may transmit the meeting through any medium. At the beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform all other attendees of any such recordings. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission of the chair. So, hi, Phil. We thought we'd just get those orders of business out. Of course, the town is recording, and I do see that the Berkshire Edge is also recording, and I will be making a backup audio recording as well.
All right, terrific. You did great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Better than I would do.
I don't think so, but
okay. We'll call the meeting to order with a roll call vote. Anne?
Aye.
Milena?
Aye.
Madonna?
Aye.
Richard?
Aye.
And Philip Orenstein is here as well, so we have everyone. Committee member announcements or statements? Anyone? Okay, seeing none, we'll get to the town manager update, and that's a reserve fund transfer. I'll turn it over to Mark.
Thanks, everyone. I would just like to start off with one different update, and that's an update on our fiscal 25 budget process, which is, by the way, well underway at this point. I've been working closely with department heads and Ally. We should have a first draft ready shortly, but more than anything, I wanted to just share with you tonight that we're on track for a presentation and kickoff on the 6th, and you'll be hearing from us when we're ready to distribute binders. So that said, in your packet for this evening, you have a request for reserve fund transfer for just over $20,000. I think the exact request is $20,000, $20,235.80. And you've probably heard by now that the select board instructed me to hire a consultant recently in an executive session meeting to conduct a financial evaluation for the acquisition and operation of the Houstonic Waterworks system for years 0 through 5. So I reached out to DPC. It's a company DPC Engineering. It's a company we work with quite regularly. And the information that we hope to receive from this study would allow us to present the question to voters eventually at a town meeting if the board wishes to at some point, so that we have all of the information we need to discuss at a town meeting whether we want to pursue a purchase of the Houstonic Waterworks system at some point. So without this information, I don't see how we'd be able to pursue a purchase. So it's a really important step in this process. And so I'm here tonight asking you all to approve this $20,000 transfer so that I can get this agreement signed and back to our engineering firm.
Can I ask you something, Mark? So is the we are really talking about doing a study, which I think is extremely important, and based on the results of the study, the decision will be made to put it in front of the voters, or the decision was made and this is just kind of to have the information to support whatever discussion.
Yeah, no decision's been made quite yet.
So there will be an important input for the decision. Okay.
Right.
And Mark, this is slightly off topic, so if this is for another time, but this is not the question of what the sort of cost would be to acquire Housatonic Waterworks. This would be the what it would cost the town to take it over and manage it. Is that correct?
Actually, both.
Oh,
Both.
okay. Oh, it's
So
both.
it would,
Oh,
it
that's
would
great.
be, yeah, it would be the cost to acquire and operate the system. And I'll just read a sentence here from the proposal. The town is interested in evaluating projected revenues, expenses, capital needs, and user fees just prior to and for a period of 5 years following such conceptual acquisition. So again, it includes the purchase, the debt service related to the purchase, and the operations for that first 5-year period. And this company is very familiar with the Housatonic Waterworks system. They did assist us early on with the study of the capital needs for the system. So
So it was the same company that did the initial, there was a estimate of what would be the additional capital expenditure needed to bring it up. This
were-
is the same.
they were one of 2 companies that assisted in that process. AECom Engineering was the other company.
Oh, there was the engineering company. Okay. All right. Okay. And have they done, I mean, I know you work with them, but just kind of curious, have they done any work with other clients of similar nature? Because, I mean, you know, a water utility is a very specific animal in terms of coming up with valuation and also understanding, you know, the operating budgets. And so I was just wondering, have they done anything similar for somebody else, another
I can't
municipality or, yeah.
I can't say with any certainty what communities they've worked with for water service evaluations like this. They do, however, conduct all of our sewer rate studies for us here in Great Barrington. So we've
What
worked
kind of
with them,
study? Sorry, Mark.
our sewer rate studies.
The sewer system?
So what do they exactly do for the sewer system?
They
Study.
they help us project costs out
Oh, I see. Okay. All
over
right.
a period of time. They also assist us with setting our rates.
I see. Okay.
So they're very familiar with utilities and
Mhm.
also enterprise funds. So
Okay.
I'm confident they have the ability to
Mhm.
conduct this
Do
study.
that. Yeah. Okay.
I guess I would like to make a motion that we approve the transfer from the reserve fund to the contracted service budget line of 20,235.80.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, how about a roll call vote? Anne,
Aye.
Milena,
Aye.
Richard,
Aye.
and Madonna,
Aye.
and it's unanimous. So push ahead, Mark.
Great, thank you. And one thing I forgot to mention earlier is that this process, this study will conclude with a public presentation. So I will keep you informed as we get closer to that public presentation so you can attend. I'm assuming it'll be a presentation before the select boards.
And did they, oh, sorry, Mark, did they give you an idea how long it may take for the study to be completed?
They did mention a very vague timeline. I think it said several months.
Okay. And do you need access to any information from the company itself?
4 to 6 months.
4 to 6 months. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it will require some information from Housatonic Waterworks. I did ask whether that would slow the process down if getting information would be a challenge. They have quite a bit of the information they need, and the information that they don't necessarily have at this time can be acquired through other means. So I don't anticipate any hiccups in the process collecting data.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think that from what I understand, their filing is very much behind, right? So that's the only publicly available information that one could get, unless the company would agree to, which I don't really think they would, most likely, share the information. Yeah.
I feel pretty certain Houstonic Waterworks would cooperate with us.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I
All
do.
right. Okay.
Mark, could
Mhm.
you remind us of sort of the current status of the requests for rate increases? I know they were stopped and there was sort of a deadline for people to come to some tentative agreement on purchase. Am I understanding that correctly? Of Housatonic Waterworks?
There's two different things happening right now. There's this study that would pursue a town purchase, and then there's the rate case separate from a potential purchase. So there is a conversation happening between interveners right now about a potential settlement at some point, but it's very, very early on in the conversation. So
I had understood, I'm sorry, I don't have the emails in front of me, but I had understood that there was a date by which those conversations were supposed to have been concluded or come to some.
we did request an extension of the first conversation because it was scheduled for December 18th, I believe. And because of the holidays and the short timeline, we all agreed, all parties, all interveners agreed that we would delay that first meeting. So first meeting took place after the new year. I think it was last week. So it's very much still early in the process.
Okay.
So we will move on to the next item in the agenda, and that is discussion of a draft guide to the Great Barrington real estate tax bill and potential possible vote. So the genesis of this is just the sort of the annual ritual of seeing many residents trying to understand their tax bill when they receive the bill in early January. As we all know, that bill tends to get a little more focus because it tends to include the any increased assessments that have been put in place by the assessor's office. So, and the reason are, in my opinion, one of the confusing elements of our tax bill is that it includes the Great Barrington real estate tax, but it also includes potentially two other items. If you're a customer of the Great Barrington Fire District, it has their district tax in there. And then it also has the Community Preservation Act surtax. So, I think there's a legitimate question as to whether or not this is needed. So that's certainly up for discussion and debate. But I thought would be a good idea. So with Ann's help, I put something together in a draft form for discussion tonight. This has already been reviewed by town staff. They've reviewed it. They haven't approved it, but they've looked at it and gave us some comments. It's also been reviewed by staff at the Great Barrington Fire District with respect to the items that describe their tax. And we made some changes based on that feedback. Also of note is I added the sort of bold sentence on the top, basically saying, please know that this user guide is intended to help taxpayers understand their tax bill. The formal authority for these matters resides with the town and the Great Barrington Fire District. So what I'm trying to say there and to play attorney is that if there's any potential conflict between what this says and what the town says, or the fire district says, they win. They're the authoritative source in all this. We're just trying to provide additional information to supplement what you get from the town and the fire district. And in terms of the format, what I did, again, all subject for discussion and input, is just there's the there's a blank copy of our tax bill in the packet.
Yes.
In the middle of that page on the right, there's that bold grid with the headline taxpayer receipt. But that's sort of the basically where all the important tax numbers are indicated on our respective tax bills. And then on the left-hand side of the page is the assessed value. And we're not talking at all about the assessed value, we're just talking about the math behind the bill. And we're just going this well, this intended to be a one pager. It's now a 1.25 pager. Is trying to just summarize the calculations in that matrix on the right hand side of the page. So that's how we got here. That was the idea. And I think what I would propose is that we finalize this and just potentially put it as make it available on the finance committee page of the website, on that left-hand side where some other committees and provide some additional materials, and just make it available to taxpayers who are looking to understand their bill a bit more, and to hopefully give them answers and maybe save a few phone calls for town staff at the same time. So that's the objective, and with that, I'll throw it open to any other comments or feedback.
Bill, do you mind if I jump in?
Please.
So as Bill mentioned, yeah, I was working with him on trying to sort of working on how to communicate this to folks. And one of the things that I know really, so what happened is some folks came to me and said, can you help me understand my increase? And so I was doing some spreadsheet work, and we were having some questions. And I guess in the original communication about going to the quarterly billing system, it was reported that we would have a 2.5% increase in the first 2 quarters. And that has nothing to do with what the actual tax increase or the levy increases or assessed value. But I guess we've gone to a 2% increase, and I'm not sure where people, I don't recall that. And so and as Allison knows, I reached out to Allison, who put me onto Alicia, who said that decision to go to a 2% increase from the previous year to the first 2 quarters of the new year is made in the assessor's office. And so, okay, that sounds fine. I guess seems like something that maybe when the tax classification hearing happens, the assessor should communicate that, or maybe I missed it. I just don't know when that gets communicated. And again, Alicia did point out, she said most towns don't even do an increase between the previous year and the first 2 quarters. Maybe that's easier for people to understand, because then we're voting on a tax levy, and then we set the rate, and then everything would just happen in the last 2 quarters. And so sort of you always start the new year with your new taxes. I think I do think get something that helps people to understand where the changes are and when they're happening. And I guess what's the advantage of a 2% over 2.5% or nothing, or maybe 4%? I just trying to understand that, I think would be helpful. So that's my end is really this, what increases or changes happen at what time and how much are they?
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with that, Anna, because I think it is a bit difficult for people to follow that, myself included. And my other, I mean, by the way, I think this is an excellent idea to do that, because I have to say, I had a conversation with a lot of people who have been residents here for many, many, many years, highly educated individuals. They have no idea how taxes get calculated. So kudos to, both of you putting it together. I think super helpful. I would just add one thing to it, which I think is really important in this whole picture, because people need to also understand maybe the assessment process. how often it happens, because people don't seem to understand that, some of it is mandated by the state, that, there's an assessment process. And really, when you think about it, and I cannot really speak for, long history here, but obviously most recently it's really the assessment that is driving the tax bills. It's not necessarily the mill rate. So people need to understand the dynamics of it a little bit more. And also, I think from what I'm hearing, and again, I don't know how accurate that is there is a there is a feeling that the information from the assessment office is not exactly accurate, or people get confused or whatever. So I don't know if there is a way for us to add something to this draft, which I think is really well put together, is very clear, very helpful, but really to speak also to the assessment part of it, which is so critical really in the whole picture here.
Well, I guess my take on that is I think it's a very good point. I think I would suggest that as sort of a potential future project. I think I couldn't say I really know. I don't have the ability to even begin to summarize how that process works. It's much more involved. It's and it relates to a lot of information that is not immediately available. So the advantage the advantage of this project is that I was under the belief with Ann's help that we kind of knew the answers to the math on this particular part of the bill, and we could provide a quick supplement to taxpayers, whereas the assessor side is, as Milena said, is very important, but that's a much longer term project to be able to communicate that to residents.
And I would not feel suggest for us to draft that, because I think that's kind of not really where any of us can feel comfortable doing it. But I would really suggest that the assessor's office has to have something in writing about what do they do, how do they do that, and if they don't, then I'm like really concerned, because there must be the process must be documented somewhere, the dates must be documented, and a legal impetus to do assessment has to be documented. So it's just a matter of pulling it together. And I really think that that is very important to people. And, again, maybe outside our scope, but something for Mark and Ellie to consider, because that's people really have a huge issue there right now.
Uh, I totally agree. If I can, I mean, I got my tax bill and it was like, I was nonplussed. I was like, what? Huh? What? And I belong to this newsletter through the Hill, this little Gmail newsletter, and it created a superstorm of, conversation. Hey, did anybody see their tax bill? What's going on? Is there a possibility, since we don't do the assessment, is there, thank you, Annie, thank you, Phil, for drafting that. I agree. It's something that should be on our page. Is there
Indeed.
something where we can put a link to the assessor's office and they can put something up? Because it was a stunning, it was just a stunning tax bill. And I'm on the finance committee, and I knew that the assessments were going up, but it just feels a lot of hocus pocus. It's not, it doesn't feel transparent at all.
Well, I probably need to turn that over to Mark a bit, but I think one point I just wanted to reiterate is that in the mention of the fire district tax, when you go through the pain of working through the math, I think it's safe to say we all saw a boost to our taxes, but a big chunk of that boost was from the fire district and not from the town. So whenever we talk about, unfortunately, you got to break it down into its pieces. They're both tied to the assessment, but the rate definitely spiked up a bit on the fire district, and they're not hiding it. I discussed it with Buddy, and that's, like, as I put in here, that's basically their way of paying for their some capital projects that they're undertaking. I'm not gonna, I think it's sort of out of our lane to talk about whether or not they're the right capital projects, but I think big picture, I would say that, that the town has, I think is sort of, has definitely observed that the downside of not investing in a water system. So while it's painful to pay for it, it's probably, the big picture is that you need to invest in the water system. So again, so the pop in the bill is from both the fire district as well as our real estate taxes. They're both linked to the assessment. I don't believe that we have the authority, to require the assessor's office to make such information available. We could certainly ask them, and they'll probably be positively inclined, but we can only ask. Richard.
So I just wanted to say I like very much the guide that you have put together. I think it's a very positive step forward. And I do think that it is something that we ought to put on our website. And I also agree with both Milena and Madonna that the workings that go on in the assessment is difficult to understand. We did have the assessor last year come to one of our meetings, and it was very eye-opening. But there was so much information, and it didn't. Weren't able to cull it all into a simple thing. It may be just a matter of us asking the question again, but I do think would be important to have some understanding of how the property assessment happens. I noticed, I do understand what you're saying, Phil, about the water section of it, but since we're on a well and we don't
Right.
pay for that, we also noticed a big increase in the assessment. And I know that happens in periodic steps. And I know there is some logic to it. It's just a complicated ritual that we need to wrap our minds around. I think it would be helpful for the citizenry if the assessor's office put something sort of describing how the process happens.
Well, that's a good reminder you made there, Richard, that we did have, the assessor did speak, and graciously did so at our invitation to this committee, I don't know, a year and a half ago. That's about right.
Yeah, just after I started with the committee. So not right. So I think we could go back and look at our notes and see what we can cull from that. But I think he can just sort of rip it off how he does it. So I
don't want to speak for him, but what I will say is that and when I've looked into it a bit in the past, there's extensive regulatory guidance, an instruction manual that comes from the state. It's voluminous in nature. So at first glance, it's just sort of by nature of what he's doing, it's a very hard thing to summarize, relative to these mathematical calculations that are in this one pager. These are very simple, whereas the assessment process is very complex, multivariate, qualitative, quantitative, etc. So anyway, I think we all agree more information is better.
Might I suggest that we add another line right under the double bold line that you have at the beginning saying, any questions regarding the assessment or property description should be made to the property assessor directly.
Agreed.
I mean, I have to say, I did deal with the assessment process in other states and other municipalities. And I think you can describe the fundamental rules. You don't have to go into a lot of details because the details, it's not really relevant, and each property will be dealt with somehow differently. But I think you can definitely summarize the guiding principles. You can summarize how often does it happen. You can also explain whether the market valuation plays any role and what kind of a role it plays in those assessed values to change. So I think it is just more really kind of for people to understand the frequency and what are some of the components that come into the whole, process. It would not be obviously, everything, but just kind of give people some idea because they simply do not understand anything about it.
I might say that
yeah.
I intend to go back and find the recording of the session where he was in front of our committee and listen to that again and try to glean sort of a general overview of that as a start for myself
Yeah.
and for us perhaps. And then over the next month or so, perhaps I could call the office, review the materials. I think he said that there were materials on the town website, which I have not yet reviewed. So I would like to do those next two reviews before our next meeting, and then I'll just let you know if there's any more that I discover.
No, that would be super helpful, Rich. Yeah.
I mean, one thing I did look into, you can go to the assessor's website and see the assessed value of any property. Actually, it's public information. And I did it for myself and somebody else. And I was, I thought that it was sort of like every 5 years was my understanding, or every 3
No.
years there was a big assessment. But my assessed value went up 12% between fiscal year 21 and 22, 13% between 22 and 23, and 11% between 23 and the current year. And I guess I was shocked. I mean, and by the way, this is, I mean, we've been talking about this, right? Assessed values are going up, but I was actually shocked how much it had gone up. And I did look at some other properties and saw very, very similar patterns. And we haven't done any work. So it's not that we've put,
Right.
we haven't put new additions or anything into the house. It's just going up in value. But I guess I would like to, I would like to ask, where did the 2.5% come from? I think it came from Pittsfield originally, but why the decision to go to 2%?
I
That
think
should be communicated somewhere, I would think.
on that point, and I think that came out of the shift from semi-annual
Oh, no.
quarterly.
Oh, yeah.
And I think our old committee mate Michelle Lubera was a strong advocate for doing something like this to smooth out the jolt between the first 6 months and the second 6 months.
Oh, I'm not arguing. I'm not saying not to do it. It's just
Yeah.
people should know what that percentage is so they can sit down and calculate. I mean, as you know, I was trying to make my tax increases balance out with 2.5%, and it was you who pointed out to me, try 2%, and then everything balanced out.
That particular detail was very helpful for me when I reviewed this
Yeah.
thing that you had put together. That made something make more sense than it had made to me in the past.
Yeah.
So I think anything like that is very helpful, but I do agree that somehow in advance of that happening, it would be good for it to be announced somewhere that we would know.
Because
Process.
that can't be a decision that is made at the tax classification hearing. It would have to be made at the year prior, because it was for Q1 and Q2, not for Q3 and Q4, when the tax increases actually start. The actual tax increases appear on our bill.
Well, no, I hear you. I mean, I think, and I'll conclude by saying, I think it's confusing because the guidance that was on the town website, which is the quarterly tax billing memo that's in the packet, that was from 2 years ago. It had 2.5%, which was correct then. It just hadn't been updated. So I think that's sort of the very specific suggesting that we can make, which is a pretty minor administrative point. But you know, I totally hear you, Ann. Although to me, this is, you know, it's a preliminary number, and it becomes somewhat significantly less important when we get our actual bill, and all of that is sort of balanced out with what the actual bill becomes. So maybe I didn't say that very eloquently, but I don't think we should correct the town website with the actual number, but it's just an estimate. And it gets corrected if it's too low or too high. It gets corrected when you have the actual bill, right?
Yes, but the
Yeah.
establishment of the estimate is an important thing that taxpayers should understand so that they know. That's
Exactly.
all.
Agree. Um,
Did you
Phil,
think
you
about
have-
adding that line that I had suggested,
Oh,
Phil, to
yes.
this
Oh,
document?
yes.
I agree. No, I'll put it in there. So I agree. Mark, do you want to comment on anything, or should we proceed?
Phil, there is one member of the audience who has their hand raised. I don't
Okay.
know how you feel about,
No, please go ahead. Yeah.
okay, so I will allow to talk.
Thank you. This is Vivian Orlowski from Lakeview Road in Great Barrington. And I have a quick question concerning this excellent guide. While not under control of town government or the fire district or the CPA, the Berkshire Hills Regional School District budget has a major impact on Great Barrington residents' real estate taxes. And could this be added to the guide, perhaps as a footnote to the otherwise excellent and pretty comprehensive review? Especially people who haven't lived here for a while may not be aware of that.
Vivian, I guess my question is it's not part of the calculation though, right? I mean, it's not, what we're trying to do is explain the numbers that are on the tax bill.
Yes. Our share, the town of Great Barrington pays about 70 to 75% of the school committee need for annual income to balance their expenses. And that's a major component of the bottom line that we're all getting in our tax bills. How do
But
you?
that's part of the budget. Yeah,
It's I don't know how it's dealt with in the town budget, but it's not under town control. So people who are concerned about what they're covering in their payment are urged to get more familiar with what the town is doing in terms of how we allocate our funds. But the town of Great Barrington government, the select board, the finance committee, the town manager, anybody else, any other committee, has no direct influence or certainly no decision making on the school district budget. And yet that's a major component. I mean, I've seen this since I've lived in town for almost 35 years, and I've seen that proportion grow also in terms of what portion of the bottom line comes from expenses that are under the vote of our town government versus those that are under the vote of the school district.
So Vivian, we are really talking about how the mill rate gets calculated, right? So we know that the property values get assessed. We know what is the spending, which is the town budget, the school budget, and then the fire district for the water part. That kind of determines the what the mill rate ends up being. But I don't think we are going through the budget explanation here. We are trying to kind of explain to people what happens in terms of how their tax rate, whatever the taxes that they pay, how it comes, how it happens, how did they get calculated. So I think that was what was the intent here. We are not really discussing the whole budget process. What are the components of it? What gets voted on? What doesn't get voted on? I think that's a separate issue. Maybe maybe to your point, it is something that also maybe some people are not necessarily familiar with, which seems to me is the case. Maybe that's something that also could be, shared with them. I think the more people know, the better. Okay, the more transparency into the whole process, everyone will benefit from that. I totally agree with that. But I don't really think this is the purpose of this guide that Anne and Phil drafted.
Yeah, I would say that the guide is being very specific in explaining the lines under the taxpayer's receipt that's on the bill.
Right.
That part we're addressing in with this particular document. I understand what you're saying, and as a person who's only lived in Great Barrington for a few years, that was something that I learned as we were going through the budget process. That's an important part of the budget process, and it's good that you pointed that out again.
Well, can I say something? The only reason I pointed it out is I understand what you're trying to do, and I think it's very important, and I appreciate it. Because those of us who are not on the finance committee need to learn more, including myself. But it's like, it's such a major factor that new people especially, but even long-term residents who are looking at the guide, if that factor is not included as like, that's why I suggested a footnote, because it's not part of the process that you're doing there, but it's so big that unless people understand that, they're not going to be really well informed. I mean, if it was the budget for some other factor that was a few $1,000s or something like that, or even tens of thousands of dollars, or even millions of dollars, like for the Department of Public Works. But that is so small compared to the total school budget of which the town of Great Barrington residents, through our taxes, pay on the average of 70 to 75%, because we have the most students in the school system. So I'm just saying, suggesting a footnote. I'm not suggesting changing the important message that you've worked out and that you're discussing now, even in more helpful ways. I'm just asking for a footnote or some other way of putting this guide into the big picture perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian.
Yeah, thank you. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I guess I hear your point, Vivian. I certainly hear your larger point. I'm at the same time, I'm very much trying to stay in a very tight lane here, if you will, and that, all we're doing is, focusing in on a little box on a tax bill and helping people understand the math behind that box. And what you mentioned is a very important issue, but it's to me, it's very much beyond the scope of what we're trying to do here. And to me, once we start footnoting, then we're kind of off to the races a bit. And so I'm inclined not to do that. What I think might be the better approach, if I may, is in our title of the page, when we say user guide, that's a little bit too broad. Maybe we might want to say user guide to the amounts listed in the Great Barrington tax bill, or something along those lines. Just we're
Or
saying
to the taxpayer's receipt box found on your tax bill. That would be very specific.
Yeah, actually, if folks are, Phil, if you're okay with this, I spend my life making handouts. So two things. One, I'd love to put an image of that box in the document so that people can see what box we're talking about.
great idea.
And again, the blank one, and I could cut and paste that in. And I still am convinced that I could get this onto one page if folks would allow me to do just a little bit of spacing work. But I think if we could get it onto one page and actually have the box we're talking about, if it were me, it'd be really helpful to know exactly what part of the bill we're talking about. And
I think that sounds very good to have the box on there so that we know how specific
Right.
we're
And I
trying
think
to
this gets
address
to,
something.
yeah, and I think this gets to Vivian's point that we're, in some ways, right, there's a lot of footnotes we could put in, but we're not, there's so, we're so really focused on just reading that box.
Well, I think Vivian raised a really good point, and that is also what Rich mentioned, that the process here is very specific in terms of how the budget gets approved, what we control, what we don't control. And I think it would be maybe helpful to have a draft that just gonna, and again, it could go on our part of the website that kind of describes the process. And I think I mean, I'll try to draft something and send it circulated around, because I think the more people understand the process, the better for everybody.
So Milena, you're
I think there's a lot
suggesting,
of confusion. Yeah, please go
you're
ahead.
suggesting a separate,
Yeah, just a simple, simple whatever, one page, or that kind of, addresses exactly what Vivian was saying, and it explains the budget process, how it happens, what it happens. It makes it transparent. I saw to what Madonna was saying, that whole brouhaha about the taxes. People started saying things, oh, the leadership of this town just does it on purpose. I mean, it's totally like insane, comments. And I think they said it because they really don't know. And I think by making it more transparent, making people more educated on the topic, it would be helpful for everybody. Yeah.
What about a pie chart?
Could be, yeah, we could do that. Yeah, could be very simple, just so that you can grasp it right away. I agree with
Right,
you.
because
Yeah.
that's what Vivian's getting to, is
Yeah,
that if you.
yeah,
look
that
at the
it
pie
shows
chart-
what, right, exactly, the different parts of the budget, who controls what is the process behind it. Yeah, I think that's
I
a
will
good
say
idea.
that, that information is all, including the pie charts, if I remember correctly, that's all in the presentation on the budget process that Mark's.
But nobody comes.
Nope. Yeah, but it's,
You can't force people to read it. I agree, but that same memo is posted on the website, similar to what we're doing. So these are all good ideas. I'm just I'm leery of.
Phil, you can never over communicate. That's kind of a number one rule.
Yeah, you could,
Okay,
but I agree, but you can
Well-
over summarize. I would say the risk is when something is a bit more complicated, then the summaries can be a bit misleading. So that would be my concern. I don't want to stop anyone from taking these initiatives, but
Well, it feels like the finance committee's under attack. I mean, from the comments that, what Milena was saying and I was mentioning on the Hill things, all of a sudden it felt like a big attack. And I mean, other people chimed in and said, no, it's the voters, it's not the finance committee. But we are people that are elected that they're hoping we're going to help, help the tax rate and help help people understand. So, I mean,
good point. Here's what I would propose. I don't want to stop any further communications to taxpayers about what's going on. But what I would propose is, we kind of do it in steps. Um, I think my preference would be to finalize this and get it up on the website so it's there and we could defer questions to that. And then if we want to expand it to, other topics, then that would be the next project.
I like that idea.
Mm-hmm.
What do
Um,
people think?
I mean, I don't know why we couldn't do both. I mean, to me, you can, this draft
Right
is pretty
now?
much, no, I don't mean this moment, but what I'm saying,
Oh.
the draft is pretty much finished. You guys, you have very little to, so we can start drafting the other one. And then at the next meeting, we can discuss it. Yeah. Because the budget process is coming up, there's gonna,
Right.
and you really want to make it, you also want to make people more aware, this is something that they should be participating in. Yeah.
I hear you. I think the problem with that is then this work product doesn't go on the website for a couple of months.
Well, Mike, what about if we just link to the calendar and say, budget meetings are scheduled, or, something, some link to the the meeting schedule, the budget meeting schedule. And
Yeah,
say,
an easy link. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, just a link to say, here's, if you're curious about the budget, here are the meetings that'll be happening, and here's, or something, you know, a link to a schedule budget meetings.
And when the document is put up on the website, that link could take, if they're going through the finance committee, I guess it could take them to that. But that document will be on the website within the next few months, right? Yep.
Which document?
Well, the document that Allison and everyone prepares,
Oh, the budget book.
describing the budget book, you
Yeah.
know,
It'll be up in a couple of weeks.
right?
Yeah, pretty soon, yeah, yeah.
Right, and that would be the important thing if we just highlight that, you know, if you have any questions about the budget, this is the best place to find it, blah, blah, you know.
Mhm, mhm.
But this document as it is with that one line added, to refer any questions about, property assessments to the assessor's office directly, I think we're done with that document from my perspective. Do we have a motion to accept this document, or?
Well, I'd like
I
to
think
make,
Ed just wanted to do some editing there to make it streamlined and easier to read. That's
Oh, yes, you
What I-
wanted
what I-
to
what I-
try to get on the page, yeah.
what I'd like to do is make a motion to approve this document, and inclusive of a couple of relatively minor changes that I'll summarize now, and that we approve this document. Let Anne do her magic on some reformatting, and then we include it as a link on the finance committee page on the website, and that we conclude this particular work product, and that we go to the next one. So the changes that I have marked down would be on the top headline, it would be user guide to the taxpayer's receipt box on the Great Barrington tax bill. Okay. The next line, I would add I forget who made it, as a good point. I would add, and when we say the town and the Great Barrington Fire District, I would add the Community Preservation Committee. And then I would add Richard's suggestion of, in bold, saying something to the effect of any questions on your assessment, please contact the assessor's office. Okay, on item 3, there's just a typo there. We don't need to talk about that. And then on item 5, in the second line, I'd like to replace where it says roughly 75% with majority, primarily because I don't know if that's the right number, and I don't want to be overly specific there, so I would just say majority instead.
Yes.
And then I'm sorry, one more change, which is just a clarification. I believe this is Sharon Gregory's suggestion. Is in that first line, I will modify to say the Great Barrington Fire District is a government entity that, and it will say, sets its own tax rate and operates independently from the town. Just a clarification there.
Do we have a link for that?
There was a link in there. I'm not sure it'll work for everyone, but there is a link there, so we can
Okay.
either hit it or copy it.
Okay.
So I think those are all of my changes. I don't think, I think they're all ones that we discussed, and
So, in my communication with Alicia, and, I thought, I guess I would have responded, but I thought she'd be coming tonight. She said to not put in the months because those may not be accurate. And Allison, I don't know if you know, she says, what was it? The biggest one is that the payments do not correspond to specific months of the year. It's actually 4 different due dates. But it seems odd to me if it's 12 months of the year and divided in 4. I don't really understand what that's about. So I guess she wants us to take out the months and just put in Q1, payment due August 1st, Q2, payment due November 2nd, November 1st, I mean, sorry.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
She made that comment to me as well in an email through Mark, and I didn't
I don't yeah.
didn't understand it because the bill actually says, it begins July 1, but anyway, it's easy. We could take that out.
Okay, all right.
But on another point, I think the whole purpose of this is to not obfuscate or confuse the taxpayer. If we're going to explain the bill, it seems that having the months there, I mean, a lot of people who are not in finance don't know what the first quarter is.
Mm.
I think it is important to be clear that we're talking about July through September.
Yeah, that's, I agree with you. That's what was my initial hope.
I agree.
I would
Um,
not, I mean, if you change July 1 through September 30 to July through September, I mean, that is always
yeah.
going to be quarter one. I can't
I'll be-
imagine that there will be a change in the quarter system for the fiscal year.
I don't understand how that would be possible, Anne.
I don't understand either. I guess I think maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, Allison, could I ask you to ask Alicia, try to clarify her concern there? I mean, I want to make her comfortable with what's in here. I heard her comment before about that. I guess I look at the left-hand side of the bill and it says above property description, it says your actual tax bill for the year beginning July 1, ending June 30th. So, I was, it says it on the bill. If somehow that's painting a picture that it sort of corresponds to the year. And so if that's incorrect, then we should make it as correct as possible. So can you run that? Can I ask you to run that by Alicia? Would that be okay?
Sure, and I can have her contact you.
Right. I guess, yeah, so you have this one pager, and if she thinks it should be something different, we could, we want it to be correct, so it should be what she thinks is right. I just, I would just tell her that if it contradicts what it says elsewhere on the bill, then that's probably not a good thing for any of us. So we just want to be mindful of that.
I
Sure.
mean, it doesn't, if the bill is due August 1st, then it's not the first quarter. It's the first fifth. So something's bizarre.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, okay.
if that's how she's thinking about
Okay,
it.
so I think we can approve it subject to Alicia's confirming those dates. I don't think, in my mind, that's okay. We'll see if everyone agrees, but, so I'll make a motion to approve this inclusive of the changes that I just described. And I could go through that, any of them again, if anyone is uncomfortable or didn't follow me.
I second the motion. I don't think we have to list the improvements again. I think it was very clear.
Okay. So any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote. Anne,
Aye.
Milena,
Hi.
Madonna,
I,
and I'm I as well. So I think.
And Richard,
Richard, I'm sorry. You're an
no
aye.
problem.
Okay, so we're unanimous on that. Okay, so I will make these changes, send them to Anne for her magic formatting, and we'll hopefully, I'll connect with Alicia sometime tomorrow and clarify what we want to do in those dates.
Very good.
thank you. You did good work, Phil and Ann. Thank you.
Beautiful job. Beautiful job.
Thank you. I'm sure, it's a difficult topic.
Well,
Um,
it's actually a wake-up call, right? So somebody gets a bill and they're going, oh my God, oh my God. And in some way, it's not a bad thing to have a wake-up call. To
Yep.
get more involved in what you're paying for.
I hear you, but to be clear, I'm not intending this as a wake-up call. I'm intending this to
No,
help
I'm saying for
understand the
just
math.
the
Yeah, no.
citizenry.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I'm also just want to be very clear that I'm very cognizant of trying to stay in our lane here.
Right,
Yeah.
but it's nice that we're trying to be proactive about it.
Good.
I appreciate that.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, great. So moving on to Community Preservation Committee update. Richard, do you want to talk about that?
Yes, so the Community Preservation Committee had a difficult task this year. We ended up having $800,000 that we could suggest awards to people who had put in recommendations. And the recommendations that came to us totaled $2,074,500. So we could only approve 800,000 of spending. We ended up putting the majority of the money that was available into affordable housing. That seemed to be many of the proposals were the most clear, and we felt they gave the biggest bang of the buck for the community. And although we wished we could slot more money towards the historic and towards open space, we did allocate much more than the required 60,000 to each of those areas. There were quite a few proposals that we were not able to suggest funding of. In the long run, we funded $95,000 towards the reconstruction of the front steps at Mason Library. There was quite a bit of discussion with the Department of Public Works about not allocating the money to fix the clamshell, which is falling apart, or the sconces right now. With the discussion with them, they let us know that a part of the required work on the rest of the library facade would involve removing those items first and then reconstructing them. So we're basically funded, they said they could cover the cost of removing those items, which would be a part of fixing them anyway. So we felt like we had to not fund those things. We funded $77,000 to the Great Barrington Historical Museum. They had initially requested a much larger grant of $115,000. We funded 77 because their work that they're wanting to do directly added on to the work they had done previously, and it would make space available to move more of the materials that they have to their, eventual location, and would also allow for a matching grant to give them significant more money to accomplish even more work on the site. We were unable to fund roof repairs for the Mahawi Performing Arts. It was much too large an ask. And we referred the Ramsdale Library's desire to have $150,000 to show the will of the community to move forward for their application for a grant from the State Library Commission of up to $3 million towards reconstruction of the Ramsdale. We suggested the better place for the discussion to happen was with the budget process and with the select board, because the select board has to weigh the eventual possibility of having to come up with another $1 to $2 million after receiving the Massachusetts grant in order to complete the renovation of Ramsdale. They have to balance that possible extra money with Housatonic Waterworks and other large projects that they have better knowledge of than we do. Also on the affordable housing side, The Affordable Housing Trust had requested granting $550,000 to the Affordable Housing Trust directly. And the sort of concept behind that was that they would like to see the Housing Trust be the funnel for all money that's going to be given to other projects. Unfortunately, we had quite a bit of discussion with the Housing Trust Fund that what we lacked was real understanding of where they were with their financing, how much money they currently had, how much money they had allocated over the past years, how much money that we had allocated to them for specific projects was actually spent and allocated already, what was still in the pipeline. And I think our discussion was very, very positive in the long run, that because CPC is probably the major funder for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, we are expecting in the future to have a quarterly report of some kind, sort of outlining where their budget is, what the projects are that they're working on, how they're funding certain things. So someone else has their thing on where there's some stuff coming up. In any case, we ended up funding other affordable housing requests directly. So Construct, we suggested $110,000 to fund. The Community Development Corporation of the Southern Berkshires, a $250,000 fund going towards a specific project of the Thornwood, the former Thornwood Inn, being turned into a certain kind of affordable housing. And then the Marble Block, $150,000 for 2 units. We ended up coming to an agreement that it would be, the units would be set aside as affordable housing for up to 90% of the affordable housing rate, which sort of coincides with a lot of the projects that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund funds. So we look to them for a little bit of guidance, and their proposal is very specifically different than the proposal that went before the voters at the last town meeting a year ago, where we had suggested giving, I think it was either 150 or 200,000 to another developer that was setting apartments aside in a different manner. This Marble Block, he was very specific in how he's managed the block and managed the money. We felt it was we were getting as much bang putting our money into that as the Affordable Housing Trust was putting their money into another project that they've just recently funded of creating a certain number of units in a single house. So all in all, as I say, we funded $533,000 worth of affordable housing funds, $172,000 of historic funds, $95,000 of open space funds, which was to the Grove Street Park for improving the facilities in the Grove Street Park, specific parts of the facilities. All of the other open space requests were for trail projects that had other possible funding or could be at a later date having further funding. There was something from the McAllister Wildlife Trail. We've already put, I don't know, 200,000 plus into the McAllister Wildlife Trail, and we felt for this year we could not give them more funding. I know that was a long-winded explanation of the committee's work, but I felt like it was very civil. It was very to the point, and I thought the funds were well appointed. Do I have any questions from anyone about any of the projects?
Actually, Rich, I do. And I did spend some time looking at the applications, and I agree with you. There was a lot of demand, as one would expect this, at this point of our economic, situation. But I have a couple of questions, and and I actually would love to speak with you maybe at some other point, because I don't want to bother everyone with that. But you mentioned one of the project, which is the Marble Block Realty, and I think they were asking for $150,000 to offer 2 units for 15 years at below the market rate.
90%.
Right, right. And I think they also provided a little spreadsheet with the details. But it just kind of struck me there that you guys look at those numbers and you did not really discount those numbers, because those are future cash flows. And if you really discount those, the value of those saves is between $60,000 and $100,000. It's nowhere close to $150,000. So I'm a little bit concerned about, and I know you have a lot of to go through at those meetings, but my concern is more like, is someone really looking closely at what's really being, presented? And this was just kind of an obvious situation where I feel that
There was quite a bit of discussion. This was not a simple decision that we made, and we brought other people into the discussion, like the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and other people discussing the actual proposal. I'd be happy to get together with you and go through
Yeah,
it.
I would
I'd be happy to do that.
yeah, I would
Maybe
definitely.
afterwards we can set a time.
We can discuss it. So, but definitely, because I think this one is just kind of a pretty straightforward, and I'm not disputing the concept. I think
No,
the concept is
absolutely.
very
I think
valid.
it would
It's just
be
the
great.
numbers.
I feel confident in the decision we made, and I'd be happy to discuss it with
Okay,
you.
so we can discuss that. And then the other concern I have is we have limited funds. Obviously, we want to do lots of things, and we have assets here that are town assets, and we have assets here that are not town assets. And we are obviously trying to make a balanced decision about where the money gets allocated. But it really worries me a little bit that, things like the McAllister, and I hear you, we put money into that, but if we don't continue, the money that we put in will basically be wasted, because the invasives, that's a long-term project that just doesn't happen over a year or 2 years or 3 years. It's a
But
lifetime project.
each time McAllister comes before us, they have very specific parts of the land that they're wanting to work on next.
Right.
So
it's a very large property.
It's not that we're going backwards. It's that some of the projects, some of the quickness of what they wanted to do in another part of the property, we weren't able to fund. But it wasn't as big a funding request as previously. But we are continuing to go forward and think about McAllister. But
I hope so, because I will tell you, the money that was spent there was a very significant investment. And the last thing I would want us to do is to pull the money away, because then it's just gonna basically revert very quickly.
We don't.
Yeah.
It isn't. The money that they requested wasn't going towards maintaining what they had already done, but to clearing additional sections.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is the invasives, they just basically they expand. It's just that you have to contain basically everything. Otherwise, it will move, and it will just, you will be back where you started.
Your concerns are so much the concerns of all of us. We saw the value in every request.
Right.
You have to prioritize it. Sometimes you just have to prioritize.
No, I understand that, but like, to give you another example, Construct, okay? And now, this is a very, very important nonprofit, does a great job, everything fantastic. But I look at it, you guys give them money to help with the rental assistance that they are, putting out there. And they provided a budget. And the budget is for $190,000, of which only 60,000 goes for rental assistance. Everything else goes for overhead. And frankly, I believe there is one guiding principle when it comes to nonprofits getting money, grant money, or this kind of a money, is you fund the program. You don't fund operating expenses. You don't fund overhead. And I look at that. I look at their budget.
Our review of it did not highlight that the majority of the money that they were asking is funding them. I did not
But
see.
if you look at it, this is in the application. This is their budget for
So
$190,000.
let's talk about that again when we get to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and again, it's just something that just right away raises a red flag for me. And I don't dispute what they do. The work is super, super important. But I really want the money to go to help people, not to fund overhead, and that's what looking at those numbers.
When you're funding staff whose job is to assist people to get to certain places, is that overhead funding or is that project funding? I consider that project.
I'm sorry, Rich. For if you have a $190,000 budget, if you have $130,000 going for whatever you call it, overhead or salaries or staff, and only 60,000 goes for the actual money that helps people to stay in their apartments, I question that, because that seems that's just not the right balance, And so these are kind of questions I feel like we have to be diligent about the process. And I'm sure, everyone has the right intentions in mind, but sometimes people just don't do it the right way. And we have to be, this is the money that's coming from this community, and we have to make sure.
As I said before, I'd be happy to get together with you.
Yeah, well, let's do that.
And we can talk about.
I would love to do that.
How we had viewed that and how you view that. I'm happy.
Right.
Conversation. Okay.
Perfect. Okay, we'll do that. We'll do it separately. Thank you, Rich.
Yeah, we did also have a hand from the audience during that discussion, but I don't know if it's still up. I think it's gone down. Okay. All right. So.
All right. Thank you, Richard.
Sure.
Richard.
All right. So I think we've covered this a bit, but citizen speak time.
Actually, while we're waiting, I have one hand. So I will promote the person to speak.
Good evening, everyone. This is James Garzone, 84 North Plain Road in Great Barrington. I just want to say thank you for bringing up significant issues that are impacting all of us in the community regarding the tax bill. As you all said already, receiving the tax bill in the beginning of January right after the holiday was a shock to all of us. I can tell you my neighbors next to me are up in arms, and we as a community are trying to do the best for our workforce, affordable housing, and limited income citizens. However, increasing the real estate taxes, not that you are, so don't think that I'm saying that you are, but increasing the real estate taxes and the CPA and the fire district and the school and everything else is counterintuitive, because here we are trying to do so much for affordable workforce housing and trying to do all these, marble blocks. But if we're driving out the people because they can't pay their real estate taxes, and then we're trying to create affordable housing, it's counterintuitive. And I guess Vivian and other people on the board today made a good point, is let's look at our tax bill. Let's break it down to the components. Maybe the school district is the largest. Maybe we need to tackle that, but we need just to think of how we can help our community. And the last thing I want is next year to have the debate of the tax rate. Do we have a single tax rate? Do we break it out? Because that's what's going to happen. People who are limited in income, they're going to say, well, we are residents and we should be paying less than the commercial, than the second homeowners. And we don't want to get into that. And that's where we're going. You know, we're going to have a new school building in the near term. There was a school meeting tonight. They're discussing how we're going to create this building. It's going to increase our taxes. So I'm just asking that we as a community start thinking, how do we start preventing this? Because we are already at the, in my opinion, the apocalypse of our tax bill. We are driving people out who we're trying to keep. I can tell you, my neighbors are thinking about leaving because they just can't afford it. You know, and there's things that we can do and there's things that we cannot do. So let's focus on things that we can to help each other. And thank you very much for all that you're doing, and making the tax bill as transparent as possible will help all of us in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, we're waiting, just give folks, I should have probably asked this during committee members, but, can I just ask, Allison, I know you have a lot on your plate right now, but any chance we're gonna see the closing of fiscal year 2023 before the start of the 24, before the 2025 budget season starts?
Oh, yes.
Okay, because we don't have another finance committee meeting between now
Mhm.
and budget, so I'm wondering, Phil, maybe we should should we either have a finance committee meeting before the first budget meeting or do it during the budget meetings? I guess I'm just wondering, when will we look at that closing out?
Well, my point well taken. My sense was that we would be receiving a big pile of information from Mark and Allison and town staff, and you know we probably have a fair amount to chew on there, and that if there's any gaps in there, or then we can address that on a follow-up session. But I just think we've got a lot to do in the budget season, and we'll have a lot of information to review. That's my take on it.
Yeah, but will it be in the budget packet, how the year closed out, so we can see what the actuals were for last year? Is that gonna be in the budget packet?
No, I will send out the year-to-date budget, operating budget and wastewater, just like I do every month. I will send one out to you that's as of June 30th, so that you can see that.
Closing out.
Mhm.
Closing out.
Just like I believe I sent it this morning
Yeah.
for December. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Right, okay, and then I'm also just wondering when, any timeline on the budget books, will they be available the Friday before the February 6th Tuesday meeting? I'm asking because I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to pick it up on Monday. Or,
We generally try to give you a weekend. We will do the
yeah,
best we can
okay,
to be able
okay.
to do that again this year.
Okay, or even if an electronic comes out.
Mhm.
Or it's put on the website before,
Mhm.
that would be great, okay.
Mark, will we be in person or will we be remote?
We will be hybrid again this year, just like last year.
Okay, thank
So
you.
both.
Okay, and, okay, so any other citizen speak? No, all right, media time? Oh, sorry, Phil, that's your,
Stealing my thunder.
sorry.
All right. So do we have a
Nobody's raising hand, okay,
motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
second.
Second.
Unanimous.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, bye.